Hey all, hey everybody, hey guys. My name is Jeff Davis, and I am looking for a guitarist and a drummer to make a hardcore punk band. If you are interested, I will be outside after Forum, so please, by all means, swing by. If you can't get by and you want contact information, my cell phone isn't working, so email me at jeffersonddavis@gmail.com. Otherwise, I'll see you outside if you're interested. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kyle.
And I'm Vincent.
We have a club called the Digital Music Production Club where we make music on our computers. So if anybody in here is into doing that sort of stuff, our first meeting is going to be tonight at 8 p.m. We're meeting at room 436 in the music building. It's open to anybody and everybody, so, don't be shy to come and share something you're working on or just learn something about making tunes on your computer. So yeah, that's it. You got anything to say?
Thank you.
All right.
What's up, folks? What's up? This is really low. I go by the name of Canvas, but my government name is Corey. What's up, people? Welcome back. With that being said, I have an album that's kind of coming out in like 3 weeks. So I'm like, buku excited, son. So September 13th is the release date, and y'all be getting more information about that. September 13th, put it in your phones and whatnot. September 13th, iTunes and all that stuff. So if you want more information, come holler at a brother. Peace out.
Hey guys, so we are Loyola Sound, and we are recruiting some employees for this company. We're a student-based company. Some of you guys have worked with us. Some of you guys know us. We're looking for students that want to work with us, and the best thing, you get paid. So if you want to email us or meet us, we're gonna be at the end of the forum. We're gonna be at the back. If you want to speak with us, our email is nolosound@gmail.com. We have new equipment, line arrays, everything that sounds really good. And if you want to learn live sound, also going to trainings, you're very welcome. All good?
Hey everybody, my name is Mario Anthony. I'm a promoter and also music manager. Is anybody interested in promotion? I'm the person to come contact. Right now, the next event I am working on is the Future After Concert, and Future will be there, Future Hendrix. So if anybody's interested in helping out with promotion, I have flyers in the front over here by the, that's where y'all got your doggos from. And if y'all interested, just contact me. My email is mario.anthony1016@gmail.com. Once again, mario.austin@gmail.com. So I'm messing up. I'm so nervous. So y'all can just come find me if y'all interested in promotion. I can help y'all out and possibly make some money. So if anybody's down to make money, I know y'all down to make money. I am. So I'm gonna, just hit me up.
What's up, everybody? I go by Mike Hazel. This is Jimmy Hank, and this is Time. And I just wanted to let y'all know we're Loyola. We actually have a rolling paper company coming out, and we actually sponsor different artists, like musicians and everything. And we're gonna be looking for more Loyola people to be a part of our events. And we have a special announcement today, so I'm gonna let my dude Samwise talk.
Hey. What's good, y'all? Hey. For y'all who don't know, I go by Samwise Ganja. That is my name, my artistries, you know what I'm saying? And like he said, he works with artists. I actually have my own pack of Loyola rolling papers right here for one of you lucky people in the crowd who... I'm gonna try to... I see hella hands up here. I'm gonna try to make it as far as I can. Hold up. Oh, dang. All right, that was far as up. First of all, I just want to say all of you are amazing. And I draw my inspiration from all of these faces I see, and I hope you guys know that because all of you, without the support of everybody, like nobody in this room could be doing anything they're doing. You know what I'm saying? Like this man Austin Rickle right here, amazing at singing. We all support him. You know what I'm saying? So he keeps doing his thing. That's just how it works. It's a circle. So I'm just here to say, like, please this year, like, support all of your local artists. And also I have another shirt to throw to somebody. You know what I'm saying? It looks like this. Hey, it's fresh. It's a medium. Hold on. Who's a medium? There it is. All right, cool. I have a thing this Wednesday that I'm doing a special offer for $20 a shirt. Mike, show him the 180. Beautiful little 180 view. You know what I'm saying? Admire Mike's back. It's pretty cool. Thank you all. God bless. You know what I'm saying?
Hey guys, my name's Karina. I am the manager for the Black Wallets here at school. We are currently looking for a bassist and a guitarist. We're an alternative rock pop thing. So if you're like interested in getting out, doing shows, we've got a lot of shows this semester. So if you're interested, text me at 608-799-6669, or I'll be out after forum and you can come chat.
What's up, guys? My name is Sarah Wall, and I am the lead singer-songwriter of the Black Wallets. We have our third single coming out, guys. We worked so hard on it. It's coming out this Friday, September 2nd, and you can check it out. It'll be on Spotify, iTunes, all those mediums. Our website is the Black Wallets, WAHLETTS.com, our own domain, yes. So, and also we're playing at the Willow this Saturday for 7:30 with the Chopped Up Tulips and another touring band. Check us out.
Thank you. What's up, y'all? My name's Griffin. This is Thomas over here. We play in a band called Stoop Kids. We have a show this Saturday at Tipitina's with some awesome bands. We got Elysian Field. They in the house right here. Yeah. Come on. We got Miss Mojo, formerly Cakewalk. They over from Tulane. They're pretty cool. But it's $10, 7 with a student ID, which I think you all have. And so, my man Thomas.
Yeah. So if any of you guys want to get some promotional experience or anything like that, we can maybe give you some free tickets if you want to come talk to us afterwards about basically doing some flyers, inviting people to Facebook and all that. So, yeah, come talk to us after Forum. We'll be outside.
We also, next week, we got a song coming out. It was produced by Ben Elman and Rob Mercurio from Galactic. Real excited for it. So just keep those ears peeled. All right. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Kate McCreary. I'm from the College of Business, and I will completely be full disclosure here. I have zero musical ability, but what I can do is I can help businesses grow. And so raise your hand if you are interested in entrepreneurship. All right, good start. Raise your hand if you are interested in working with a very cool entrepreneur who's actually here in this room on his music sharing platform app thing. Sorry, Tim. Okay, so I'm going to put Tim Capel on the spot, and I'm going to ask him to come up, and I'm going to ask him to pitch his app that he's developing. Sorry, I had to. All right, so Tim, tell us what you're working on.
Yeah, so in addition to teaching quite a few of you all and being a full-time practicing attorney, I also have a startup here locally with me and my co-founder, who is also a Loyola grad living in Nashville, named John Hikes Paul. I don't know if any of you all know him, but he is a Loyola undergrad, graduate from this program, and we founded a company last year called Echo. And Echo is a mobile application that lets you reconnect with your musical past, right? So it lets you take music from your past and tag it with people, places, events, the things, the context that's important to your own musical history. So we're trying to redefine what it means to have a digital music collection in the era of Spotify, where it's something more than just saving an artist or liking an artist or making a playlist. It's something that has more context, is more personal to you. and then you can share it with your friends and your social networks. It's sort of like Time Hop for music. If any of you have downloaded Time Hop, that's what we're all about. So right now, we just launched in beta about 2 weeks ago. We're having some positive feedback so far. Our main goal for this semester is to really increase our adoption locally and then move on from there. So it is functioning. We worked with a great company here in town called Lookfar to develop the app. Took quite a bit of money to develop, and we're about to engage or embark on our next fundraising quest. We're going to try and raise some additional money to take this to market out of beta and into market in a real way, and we would love to have your help as we go forward.
All right. Okay, so long story short, Tim is looking for interns, and I am also looking for interns. So Tim is only one of 8 amazing companies that we offer internship positions at. Again, I'm from the Center for Entrepreneurship and Community Development right here on campus. I will leave these flyers at the table where all y'all registered, so please pick one up. The deadline to apply is this Friday, so you can only procrastinate a little bit before you actually have to fill out your application. But my contact info is on the flyer. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. You're going to leave those up top, right? Okay, awesome.
Hello, is this on? Oh, yeah.
It
Hey,
is.
One quick thing. I'm a huge fan of the guy who was up here, Tim, because I've known him since he was a student many, many years ago. And I would love to work with him. I think it's really cool what he's doing. So, but entrepreneurship these days, you've got to be involved in that. So anybody who didn't raise their hand is out of their mind, because that's the only way you can really make it these days, or it's one of the best ways to make it.
If you're just coming in, come on down, come on down. I just have one quick announcement before I introduce our guest. Eamon, everyone, Matt Jackson coming in. There's plenty of seats down front. Don't hide in the back. Thank you. Third Saturdays at the Neutral Grounds. You guys, many of you already know that I'm putting on a show of Loyola students every third Saturday of the month at the Neutral Ground. A bunch of you have already agreed to do it. Some of you, I have students that I know. I have, in some cases, actually emailed you individually to ask you to do it. A lot of you have replied and said yes. So right now, the September one is pretty much booked. The October one has 1 open slot, and the November one has like 3 open slots for students to come and do a 20, 25-minute set. And but you know, I've reached out mostly to the students that I know best. So if you're a student who's a performer, and I don't know you, you might not know about this, but please send me an email, lfaber@loino.edu, if you're interested in a performance opportunity with other Loyola students. Okay? Our guest today, I have introduced twice already today, so I'm going to make this brief. Todd Brabec is one of the Brabec brothers. He's a legend both in the music industry and in the field of teaching about and writing about the music industry. You've done both of those things. And he has a website, musicandmoney.com, where there is a ton of really useful information and resources that y'all should check out. And he and his brother have written this book, Music, Money, and Success, which I see prominently displayed on the table in front of him.
Self-promotion.
And that, believe me, is a book that all of you really ought to own as soon as possible. So please give a warm welcome to Todd Brabec.
Thanks, Lo. Hey, you know, just a quick thing about myself. You know, some of the people I talked to today already know this, but I'll make it real brief and short, the same thing, I think. But my brother and I have a twin brother who looks exactly like me, even at this stage of the game. We still look alike and get confused by people, as you will attest, as you know. But we started off in high school, we had bands. College, we had bands. We went to law school at NYU, and we actually had records out. when we were going to law school at NYU. We used to perform down in the Village a lot, and we were on Audio Fidelity Records, which was a big label at that time, was subsequently bought, as is everything else these days, by somebody else. And we had great reviews, no sales, so I said adios to my performing career. And I became really, I enjoyed the business and legal side, so that I enjoyed performing and the artistry and all that kind of stuff and playing, but my real interest was in the other side. And mostly it's been, I've worked with ASCAP, which most of you know what that is, the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers. I worked there for 37 years as Director of Membership and Executive Vice President. And as you all know, it's a performing right organization, which basically anytime music is being performed in the United States, ASCAP negotiates a license, as does BMI and CSAC, the competing organizations. They collect the money and they pay it back to writers and music publishers. And that's a writer's most important source of income. So university licenses, radio, TV, anything else, that's what ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC do. So, but I've been fortunate in my career because I signed an awful lot of people and the times I started, which is the early 70s, on the business side of this whole thing, you'd still there weren't a lot of barriers between you and the songwriters and the artists and stuff. So I got to really meet most of the writers and know them very well, the older writers and as well as all the newer ones, and their managers, lawyers, and agents and stuff. These days, as you know, there's an awful lot of, once you have some success, even if you don't have a lot of success, there's a lot of barriers between the public and just you, if you want to get to know these people or co-write with them or do some, other types of things with them. It's a little more difficult these days to actually get to the artist or the writer. It's easier with the writer and stuff. So I was fortunate because I signed a lot of people in my career, everything from like the Guns N' Roses to Metallica to Jay-Z to a lot of the country guys, very heavy in the film and television industry where where Jeff and I teach for the last 15, almost 20 years, actually 20 years, I think. But the film and TV area is a whole different type of composer and a different type of contracts and different type of background as far as education and what they need to know. That's changing a bit, but it still, helps to be classically trained. But as I said, even that world's changing a lot where rock and roll, when I say rock and roll writers, I mean pop writers or anybody who gets radio stuff. It could be hip hop, rap, country, rock and roll, and anything. But so I spent a lot of time in that particular area, so I've been very fortunate. But during the course of that whole career, my brother works at BMG. He's one of the main lawyers for them. He does most of their contracts, and BMG is the 4th largest music publisher in the world, along with Warner Chappell, Sony ATV, and Universal. And Jeff's been doing it an awful long time. But as I said, he and we've always been pretty much on the side of the creator, as well as those that represent the creator. Even my brother at BMG, really, they are a very artist-friendly, writer-friendly company as opposed to some other countries. So their contracts that are negotiated are much fairer, at least from what I've seen, than most contracts in the business. No, Jeff and I wrote this book, Music, Money, and Success. It covers every type of licensing deal. It's mainly music publishing and licensing for film, TV. We do scoring contracts in there. You name it, it's in there. But it's not a beginner's level. It's kind of a beginner's level, but once you get in the business, you really need the knowledge that's in this book or whatever book that does the same thing. Because it concentrates really on making money in this business, how to make a living. And when I first started in the industry, there were like maybe 3 or 4 sources of income if you were a writer or an artist that you really had to pay attention to and hopefully get a handle on. There was, so obviously record sales, which were a big item in those days. We all know where that's gone these days. But writers did make a lot of money from album cuts and singles and physical product. The second source was really getting the performance area. There was the ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC, where writers would join these organizations. These organizations would negotiate licenses with all the users of music, the radio industry, the TV industry, HBO, universities, restaurants, bars, grills, live concerts. And they would collect the money and then pay it back to writers and publishers who had performances in all these medias. And the other source of income was getting placements of songs and records in film, television, and not so much video games. I wasn't around when I first started, but and for film, television, and advertising commercials. Major source of revenue. So that's really where the concentration was for anybody then. You know, these days, that world has changed completely because, as you know, on the mechanical side for record sales and stuff, that's gone way down. That's not a major source of income except for some artists, which I'll go through some figures here for, you know, some people are making a lot of money still. But album cuts, you don't have a lot of people getting album cuts anymore, which has kind of hurt an awful lot of writers because that was always a great source of income. You didn't have to have a hit song to actually make money as a writer. The film, TV, and video game placement is still very big, a main source of income. But now you've got so many different sources of placement in audiovisual and other product. Could be greeting cards with music on them, e-cards, music and apps is a new form of where people are making money both as writers and publishers. I'm just trying to think of, there's some, I'll give you some other examples of, you might not think of, lyric reprints, remixes, samples, you know, games, interactive dolls and toys and toothbrushes. There's the Tooth Tunes, which is a toothbrush that plays music. It's mainly for kids and stuff. There's a 2-minute duration of the particular license that plays the sound recording in the song. And, you know, people actually make a lot of money in that. And they use 2 minutes because that's the amount of time they suggest that a kid brush their teeth. So you go out and buy a particular composition in the Tooth Tunes. You know, I don't know what they cost, but the royalties are pretty good on it, both on the master recording and on the song. So a lot of opportunities out there. You really have to pay attention, and you've got to know how the basic deals are structured in this area. And I'll give quite a bit of time for questions at the end here on any of the stuff I'm going to cover. Let me just cover some of the basics so you got it. But because any type of license, and by license, what I mean is that when you're a song, you always have to separate two things, the song and the sound recording. Technically, it's the musical composition and the sound recording. I like song and record better because most people get it that easier. Anytime you're using both of those things or one of them, it's a separate negotiation and a separate license. Anytime if you're watching a feature film or an independent film or show on TV, whether it's a streaming service or it's a network or it's a cable TV network, anytime you hear a song being performed in it and they're using a master recording, the original master recording, you know there's been 2 negotiations for that particular, to get that song and master recording into that audiovisual product. That's how the world works out there. And the area that I was in most of my life is the performance area. And that's easy. It used to be relatively easy, where you joined as a writer or as a publisher, you join one organization, ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC. They're very different as far as their payment schedules, their payment rules, their distribution policies. Their contracts are very different. They can run between 1 and 5 years, depending on the organization you're in. So these are all the things you have to pay attention to if you're a songwriter or a composer and a music publisher. Before you join an organization, you better know what they do, how they do it, and how to get out if you want to leave. Because writers do switch back and forth, but you can only be a member at one organization at any given time. But at least in that area, when you have performances, all the live performance areas in universities and bars, nightclubs, anywhere, concert halls, radio and TV performances, all those areas are covered just by those entities have licenses with ASCAP and BMI. So there's no negotiation on your part as a creator or as a representative of that person, a lawyer, manager, or an agent, or a publisher. It's already done for you based on these particular deals that have been negotiated. So that gives the users the right to play your songs, but in order for them to play your songs in an audiovisual product, they have to get permission to put the song and the record into the product. So you're covered on one end, but you still have negotiations on the other end. One of the things I was talking with, let me just mention some positive and negative sides as to what's going on here, and I'll expand a little bit on it. The positive sides in this business, I look at Sundance, which I've gone to a couple times, but it's gotten too crowded for me. It's ridiculous. But you know, that's all feature films, documentaries, independent films, and stuff like that. There were like 12,000 submissions last year. All that means to me is that you have 12,000 submissions of audiovisual product into the main film festival. Almost all of them have music in it, and most of them are using new music, because the reason they're using new music is the traditional or popular music and stuff, particularly from the big companies or hit songs and stuff, even past hit songs, they're normally too expensive for any type of filmmaker except a major studio and major independents. So there's a lot of opportunities there for that. The deals are pretty easy. They're synchronization licenses, very similar between film and television. They're like a 2 or 3 or 4 page license, which grants the user or the producer the right to show that film, anywhere in the world. Most deals. Some of them are step deals where they, if they're independent films or documentaries, there'll be film festival licenses where all you do, they have the right to show that film in a film festival or other film festivals, but once for a certain fee, let's say $500, a very low fee for a song in a film. But once it goes beyond that, let's say the film festival goes to a minor distribution through a number of states, or major distribution throughout the United States, or foreign distribution of the film if it does well. You have built-in these licenses, you have built-in increments where you as a songwriter and a music publisher keep on making money as this film goes into all these different stages. So it's really a license based on success. You don't see it in major studio films or major independents. Those licenses are just one-time fees. Major hit songs could be $10, $15, $20, $30,000 to put the song in that film. But in the lesser films and documentaries, you've got these step deals, which you have to know about, where you get something in those things. And I recommend always, to anybody, if you're doing a license for any audiovisual product, never worry about the fee. The most important thing for all of you who are starting out or new to this game is to get credits and to get some kind of notoriety on things. So say you make a lousy deal, say you do it for a gratis license, which I'm not a big fan of, but people do it, where you do it for free and they have the right to use the song, and everything I'm saying applies to the sound recording also. But if you do a low fee for let's say a reality TV show, let's say $500, and it should be $5,000 or $10,000 for a major TV show and stuff like that. The worst thing you do, you've made a mistake on the price. You haven't lost the copyright. You still own the copyright as the music publisher or the songwriter, whomever. But so you've made a lousy deal on price. You learn your lesson, but at least you have a credit. That's this whole business. You need 8 credits on everything before people will actually look at your work. And so you have to build these up somehow, and a lot of times you make mistakes, but never give up the copyright in these situations, or share the copyright unless you're getting something back from it. I deal in the music publishing world an awful lot, and as all you know, writers sign with music publishers, and most music publishers are supposed to collect the money, administer the copyright, and exploit the composition. Obviously, so you don't have to do that. Most important area that they're in is to exploit the composition. They're the ones who should know of all these new sources of income. They're the ones who should have samplers and other types of online ways to get your compositions to these new users. And they're the ones who negotiate the deals for you. So you don't have to worry about that. But for all of you who are in that side of the industry, that's your job, to know those new sources of revenue, how the deals are structured, and what the deal terms are. And the deal terms can get pretty tricky out there these days, particularly when you're dealing with new media and the online world. Most of my career was in traditional media, where there's a range of fees. Everything's based on the budget for everything, no matter new media, old media. It's all based on whatever budget they have for music. So a lot of times you may have say if you're representing a decent catalog or some decent songs and stuff, you have a price range that you might go normally. But for a lot of the new media stuff or for new ventures, you may have to adjust your price if you want that composition in there and the sound recording in there. Because these days, I was giving an example today of how The Voice works, or American Idol, or those type of shows. What they do is, before the season starts, they go in and they go to these music publishers and independent and majors, and they'll clear a lot of songs. They may clear 1,000 songs for the season. They only use a certain amount, obviously, if you've seen the shows. So they've cleared these songs. They've given these people what the deal structures are. And in those shows, there's not much money up front. You're really looking for the back-end royalties from ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC. But so they clear all the songs, and then if all of a sudden, if you don't go along with their price function, parameters, they just drop you out of it. and most likely will not use you again, except if you're a big company, then big companies do drop the prices. But you have to be careful on that because they have a lot of songs they've already cleared. And I hate the word music is fungible because I don't believe in that. But in a lot of on the business side, music is fungible in many cases, where all that means is that if you are not expendable, your song can, or you are expendable rather, they can drop your song and go for something similar to it, the way they look at music and songs and, in the world these days. So you always have to be careful in your negotiating tactics. If you're successful and you have a good roster and stuff, fine. You can ask for the world. It's like any other business, sports or anything else. If you're in the middle, you have to be careful because there's a lot of people in the middle these days, and there's even more people at the bottom who want to try to get to the middle. So just be careful in your negotiating tactics. And I mean, my brother and I cover it ad infinitum, in the book here. But it's important for every different area because they're all different. Film is different from television. Then there's all the different types of television. Reality is different from cable television or from dramatic TV. Different type of licenses, different type of deals, different type of price structures. So you have to have some feel for that. Music and apps, you've got to realize the apps thing is interesting only because it's a new form of exploitation, doing very well, obviously. You've got millions of apps out there. Many of them use music. And the basic structure of these deals, it comes off the Apple situation, where Apple's taking 30% off the top. So let's say you have a song downloaded into an app, whatever. There's so many of those apps now. Apple takes, it's $1 to download it. Apple takes 30%, or close to 29, 30%. So you're down to, let's say, 70 cents. Then if you've got the developer could take another 30%. So now you're down to, let's say, 40% left over. That figure is then shared between the songwriter, music publisher, and the master recording owner, the record company. So let's say you've got 30 cents left out of that whole transaction. The writer publisher gets 15 cents, and the sound recording owner gets 15 cents. Then you go to the deal between the record company and the artist may have a 15% royalty, so the artist would get 15% of whatever that figure is the record company got. On the music publisher side, it's much better because let's say that 15 cent is the music publisher. The writer always gets half the money in any music publisher-writer transaction. So if $1 comes into a music publisher, 30 cents comes into a music publisher, the writer has to get 15 cents out of that music publisher. Normally, the writer will get a 75% payment only because many publishing deals these days are 75-25 split with the writer, meaning the writer has his or her own publishing company, so they get a share of the publishing income. So most times if, I look at the ASCAP BMI situation where I mentioned, a number one hit song, major hit pop song genre, can earn, let's say, really high-end, $1 million in a year to the writer, an equal amount to the publisher. So you can see there's a lot of money in the songwriting and the music publishing side, whereas for that same song, the sound recording is making zero from the traditional radio area. There's no money being paid to artists or record companies for traditional radio. So all the money is going to the songwriters and the music publishers. Now you switch over, as I said, you've always got to keep that distinction between the songwriter or the musical composition and the sound recording separate, because if you go to the online world, I'm talking about the traditional world, and every other area, with the exception of the radio area I just gave you, most times the sound recording is making the same amount as the music publisher songwriter royalty. If they're under a most favored nations clause in most agreements, where let's say you put a song into a video game, let's say a Grand Theft Auto, for example, then they want to use the master recording. Whatever is negotiated for the song, the master recording gets the same amount. As far as the terms, as far as the fees go, everything. That's called the most favored nations clause. And it's the same in film, in television, in a lot of these other things that I mentioned, whether it's greeting cards or apps or interactive dolls and toys when they're using music and the sound recordings. It's always an equal split between the record company and the music publisher. The creator split is different, as I said, once it gets beyond that, but in the initial negotiation, they're the same. I was getting, that's the traditional world, the traditional media world, where still to this day, most of the money is in that world. Whether you like it or not, film and TV generate a huge amount of money for songwriters, composers, music publishers, and record companies and artists and stuff. Live performances is different. That's really more the artists making more money than the songwriters. But the songwriters can make a lot of money in there because all live concerts are licensed by ASCAP and BMI and CSAC. When you start looking at the top grossing tours, you could have a situation where in the big tours, each song could be generating $25,000, $30,000 in live performance monies to the songwriters and the publishers. So don't discount that. The live performance is a source of income for at least the songwriter publisher community. Once you start getting into clubs, smaller clubs and stuff, there's practically no money, so that's really the artist is the one that makes most of the money in those situations. But you switch over to the online world, which is a relatively recent world to the music business. It's very misunderstood, particularly by record companies at the start, but it's becoming a major source of income. And it's the income sources that all of you should be looking at, because that is really your future in it. Traditional media will always be around, but what's happened with every traditional media license these days, like in film, television, radio, anything else, there's always incorporated into an online new media aspect to it. So if you have a traditional television broadcast of a show, there's always something in there that takes into account like a Netflix or a Hulu or an Amazon or a streaming service situation as part of that traditional license that's been negotiated for the music as well as the sound recording. So that's the good thing. That's pretty new, because you normally had separate licenses in those in the past. The online world is great for sound recordings, meaning the records and the artist and anybody involved in sound recordings, but at least up until now, it's not so good for songwriters and music publishers. So as I said, if you look at the ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC, the performance world, where most writers and publishers make their money, there's about a $2.2 billion collections in the United States, as well as foreign countries, the money that comes into the U.S. ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC. Almost all of that is for traditional media. Only 160 million of that 2.2 billion is for all online uses. So that's why when you start talking about YouTube or Spotify or Pandora or any type of streaming service, or Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, the royalties, the back-end royalties are very small for those type of uses. You could make, if I'm watching, let's say, TV, network TV and stuff, and I see, take The Voice, for example, and I see the theme song, I know that's worth probably about $1,000 to the writer, $1,000 to the publisher for one airing on network TV. Somebody sings a song, it's probably between $3,000 and $5,000 total, writer and publisher combined, for that one performance. This is after you've gotten the sync license. This is back-end royalties. When I look at those same shows being performed, let's say on Netflix or on Hulu or Amazon, that same performance could be worth 1/10 of 1 cent. So, and on radio, I just said, a huge hit song can be worth, let's say, $500,000, $600,000, $1 million to the writer, equal amount to the publisher. For the really big songs, compositions, those same things, if you look on YouTube or Spotify or Pandora, you could have 10 million views or plays or whatever term you want to use, and it could be worth $3,000. Or you can have, that's why when somebody says, I got 100 million views on YouTube, I say, good luck. Okay, you might make $20,000 total as a writer and publisher, and some money as an artist also. So just keep that perspective in mind, because that's the world we're in right now. That is changing, and hopefully will change in the future. But as of right now, there's very little money in the new media world. But that's the whole future of this business, or much of the future. So you do have to deal with those economic realities of that world. And so you have to look at all these other opportunities in addition to getting a lot of views or plays on those type of services, whether they're audiovisual services or whether they're just the regular audio services. The exception to that area is for sound recordings, the records and the artists who are performing in those records. At least Congress put in 1995 and 1998, they put in a law where it's a very limited performance right. It's a very limited right, like ASCAP and BMI and CSAC have an unlimited performance right. Everything time you perform music is covered under that particular right, and the negotiation and collection. With this particular right, it's limited only to non-interactive streaming. So if you think of Pandora or any type of regular webcasting radio, where the consumer does not choose what they want to hear. Pandora, you can choose one particular artist, but after that, it's all things that are similar to that based on their algorithms. But Spotify would be a good example of interactive service. At least in the non-interactive area, there's this organization that was created also under this law called Sound Exchange, which if you're an artist or a background musician or vocalist, you really need to join this organization because it covers all non-interactive webcasting. And they've collected now, they've gone from, in the space of 15 years, from $0 in collections to $888 million. So for artists and record companies, it's a major new source of income on it because record sales are down, so you don't count on that much anymore. But this, at least for this particular limited right, it's great. Now, I see artists, successful artists are making, $50,000, $100,000, $150,000 a year just on this particular non-interactive streaming. And it applies primarily to SiriusXM, Pandora, and to the music choice channels on cable TV. So, and how the money is split up, it's great because it goes 50% to the record company, 45% goes directly to the artist, regardless of whether they advances with the record company or not. It goes directly to the artist, and 2.5% goes to all the background musicians who are on that sound recording, and all the background vocalists who are on that sound recording. So everybody gets paid on a sound recording. And if you're a producer, the artist can assign a certain percentage of the royalties to you as a producer. So it's a great new source of income, and there's no cost to join. And they have reciprocal agreements with the sound recording organizations throughout the world for reciprocal payments when the sound recordings are performed outside the U.S. The only problem with that is that it's a very limited right that Congress put in, and as I think I mentioned, the traditional radio business in the United States, they refuse to recognize artists and record companies as a royalty for when records are played on traditional radio. That also was part of the negotiations for this new right. So therefore, no money from foreign countries is coming into the United States for U.S. sound recordings being performed in any media over there, only because it's not a reciprocal right. So that's the unfortunate part of this. If that ever changes, hundreds of millions of dollars would come into the U.S. if they ever change that law. But that has to be done in Congress, and I don't see any near future development for that thing. Let me mention one thing about sampling, because I know it's an issue with a lot of younger writers, bands, and stuff, and then there are people who represent them. The sampling thing, you have to be really careful in that because, I've been involved in my career with many, and my brother also, many unauthorized samples. All that means if you're writing something or recording something and you use, it could be a couple seconds, it could be a small segment of a song, or even a sound recording, you may not think it's recognizable, but if it is, and someone finds out about it, and you haven't gotten permission from from the music publisher who owns the copyright, or the sound recording copyright owner who owns the copyright for the record, you can definitely lose all the royalties for your particular project, which I've run into that quite a few times where you can have a very successful song, they've sampled somebody else, whether it's either part of a song or part of a sound recording, and they've put the record out, didn't get permission, and all of a sudden it's found out, and then there's very little litigation in that area because sometimes it's so obvious that, but you can stand to lose all the royalties for a particular thing. Just how those deals work. If you are doing sampling, what normally happens is you got a different number of scenarios here. You can either you can go to someone and say, whoever the other copyright owner is, you're the creator, as an artist, or a writer, or the one representing those people. You go to the other parties whose compositions or records you're using. You can have possible one-time buyout of all the rights. Very unusual, but that's one option that somebody could give you. Normally, it's a percentage of the income from the new recording. So what the old song or old sound recording will get, a negotiated percentage, it could be 10%, 15%, 20%, depending on how much and how important you have taken from that song or from that sound recording, and that's what they'll get from now on as part of these negotiated deals. Also, there could be a transfer of the part of the copyright of the new song, which happens a lot, where all the older writers and the old publishers or old record company are now put onto the new song. So anytime the new song is played, performed throughout the world, or the sound recording is performed anywhere, you have multiple new parties in it who all share based on whatever agreement you've come to. So those are two of the basic ways. A lot of times also what you'll have is in the new recording on it, the people who own the old song and the old recording, because most of them they're very famous recordings or particular songs in this case, they are very careful as to how their works are exploited. So many times in the new deal that you have, when you make these deals, you as the creator with the old recordings or the old song copyrights, they will put restrictions in there as to how you can use this new composition and record. They may say you have to get permission for all advertising uses or for all film uses or for anything outside of this particular sound recording. You need permission from them, and then they'll have the split set up in the deal. So there can be a lot of restrictions on these type of things. So, I mean, a lot of times sampling works great, and if in a particular situations it really makes sense, but you got to just be careful as to not doing it without permission. And if you have very little success, I mean, you'll never be found out anyway. So it's an academic exercise. But if you do have it, it can amount to an awful lot of money. As I've said, I've seen hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars of money being lost because of somebody not doing the right thing right at the start, and then all of a sudden thing blows up and becomes successful, and then somebody finds out about it and you didn't negotiate. Most cases you can negotiate out of it, but in some cases, if you're hard-nosed about it, or if they're very upset about it, when you've taken something very well known, even a small portion of it, and it could affect the copyright of the old composition, they'll take all royalties out of the whole situation. So that's one situation. Like I said, remixes, I'm sure you guys get into a lot. Remixes is very easy in the most cases. There's no copyright transfer of ownership, so when you're remixing something, there's never a transfer of copyright between the song to you because you've remixed it for a new genre or a new exploitation way. Sometimes, in certain cases, for major remixers, they will make a deal with the publisher or with the sound recording owner, where they will actually get a percentage of sync licenses. Where if this new composition, this new remix is actually used in a film or TV program or in a feature film and stuff, they might get 10 or 15% or whatever the fee that was negotiated to put that new master and song, master obviously, into that particular production. So there are ways to make money on remixes. Normally it's a one-time remix fee and that's it. If you go out of the country, in France and some other countries, they actually have, under the performing rights societies over there, they actually have remixer percentages where remixers, and even in clubs, get a payment for when they remix compositions. Obviously, it's big in the EDM world and stuff like that, but that doesn't happen here in the United States. I represented SFX for years and stuff. They were the biggest EDM festival company in the world almost and stuff, and but that was never an issue because the remixers were paid, and the remixers and the DJs were paid an awful lot of money, but the only licenses they really needed in all those festivals and venues were the ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC licenses, the performance license. They didn't need a license to use samples. They didn't need a license to do remixes, as you would in any normal situation, but you couldn't record the stuff and try to sell it because then that brought an additional right where you would have a problem. You did need permission. But within the club atmosphere or the live performance atmosphere, you can do pretty much you want just under the ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC licenses. And any questions out there on any of this stuff? Because I'm just running through an awful lot of stuff here, which I think might be hopefully valuable to you. There are only 10,000 of you there. I don't see one question. My God, I must be really good. Yeah.
I'm curious about the blurred lines case, and how is that going to affect future groups
Yeah, well, yeah, the blurred line case, I don't agree with at all, nor do most lawyers, except the ones who won the case. It's now on appeal, but most music publishers and everybody else disagree with that case completely. You always have to look out in any type of, infringement suits are exceptionally expensive, I tell you. That's why a lot of people settle, even for these frivolous suits and stuff. Many times they're settled by companies just because the money is extraordinary in legal fees. But, in this particular case, you always have to beware of, if you go to a jury, you never know what can happen. And that's because juries don't understand really the law in this area, and it really depends on the judge's instructions in a lot of area. And I think that's where the problem happened in this particular case, but because I disagree with the ruling. And hey, I knew Marvin Gaye. I'd signed him from BMI back in 1971 to ASCAP. He moved his catalog to ASCAP back in '71. I know the estate. Pharrell, I've known off and on for years and stuff, and Robin Thicke I've never met, but he was the I almost said the buffoon in this whole thing on it. But I just think it was bad law, and it's on appeal right now, so we'll see what happens. But you do have to be very careful as to when, one thing that's going to happen from that case is if you're an artist out there or a songwriter, and somebody asks you, well, who are your influences? I would say nobody. I'm my own influence, and that was it. Because once you say you're influenced by somebody, someone is going to go back and say, well, his stuff sounds a little bit too much like that. And it's a very litigious society, as we all know, so it's best to, I'm kidding on that, you can still use, but that's taking the thing to an extreme, which I would seriously, if I were the lawyer for somebody, I would say, be careful as to how you phrase your answers to certain types of questions, because you never know what's going to happen. Ed Sheeran has just got hit with the same thing and stuff. But with that, you have to be careful when you're looking, particularly beats, because the beats are copyrightable. So you have to be careful on that when you are using beats. And you just have to be, there was a case I remember, and I knew all parties in it. It was the original Ghostbusters theme, Ghostbusters movie, and it was Ray Parker wrote the score for that, and he wrote the theme to the Ghostbusters. Great theme. I signed Huey Lewis many years ago in San Francisco, and he had I Want a New Drug, and the songs were very close, and I think I Want a New Drug, they put it in a temp track. What happens in the movies a lot of times, the producer or the music supervisor will put just a lot of different tracks, famous tracks, into a scenario and tell a composer or songwriters, this is where music fits in, and don't use these things, but it gives you the feel for how we want this movie to sound. Very common. They're called temp tracks. And I think when Ray Parker did it, it was very close to what he did was very close to I Want a New Drug, which, by Huey Lewis. So they eventually, there was a threat of litigation. I think there was litigation. And so the settlement, obviously came from that. So there's a sharing of royalties in all those type of situations, most times. Sometimes, there's no sharing of royalties where the old party gets all of it. But just be careful when you're using things that are close to, if somebody asks you, well, give me something like this. It's fine doing it live and stuff and coming up with something, but once you record it or put it, into any type of permanent item, permanent collection, you have to be careful, because then it does become a copyright infringement situation. So you do have to look out. Yeah. It shouldn't stop your creativity, but just it should make you think a little bit. If all of a sudden somebody says, "Geez, that really sounds an awful like lot," you should just think for a second. Yep.
So I have a question, but I'm forgetting some of the words inside the question, so I might butcher it a little bit. So
Give me the start and the finish. I'll make up the middle. I don't know.
So there's this new law where now artists can sell equity of certain parts of, like if they create an LLC, they can sell equity through crowdfunding.
Yeah, the crowdfunding and yep. Well, the crowdfunding things, I think is a good idea in many cases, because it does give an opportunity to get funds. And funds are first of all, you've got major record companies and major music publishers not signing a lot of people. Independents still do, so you still have a lot of deals out there. But there's got to be a way, and there's so much opportunity these days for getting your music out there, which is good and bad. I mean, if 10 million people can get all their stuff out there on a platform, is that good or bad? How do you find the 1 or 10 people who are really good? which is all of you, obviously. But it's a good source. It's a way for people to get money and be able to finish their projects, whether it's sound recordings, whether it's a tour and stuff. And, the add-ons that the crowdfunding stuff does, some of them are very good, where you do kind of get, they're almost like the VIP packages that you get these days at concerts, because certain aspects of the music business, the income has gone down in, so the artists are making it up in different ways. So you have the VIP packages, which is an obvious one, where you get the meet and greets, you get the souvenirs, you get advance notice, whatever add-ons you can get these days. That's exceptionally important, and that's how I look at crowdfunding. It's an addition now to the regular sources that used to fund all these operations. I've seen them even in people who have theater productions, which are very difficult to mount, to get involved with a theater production, to hopefully get it into a small venue someplace for initial showing, and hopefully it goes on from there. But, there's the equity things you have to be a little careful about. The add-ons are easy. When you start getting equity in things, it goes to, you have to look at those contracts as to who actually owns the copyright and how is the equity distributed. Is it on gross profits, on net profits? And there's a lot of different factors in these type of deals where you can't, the easiest way when crowdfunding started, it was great. Family and friends and everything else would you just throw money in there, you don't care if you get it back or not. Once they've gotten a little more sophisticated now, which I have gotten very sophisticated, the contracts have gotten, quite, complex in a lot of different areas. And if you do have success, those contracts should take care of every type of aspect. I just wrote an article which it was for the it was a law review article which was voted one of the 10 best articles in entertainment law. It was a law review article, so it's very legally, it's a legal article, but it makes sense for almost anybody reading it. But what was the point of that? There was a point I was going to make off that thing, as to which I completely. Yeah. I just drew a blank on the point. There was a point to what I was going to say. Other than saying I wrote a good article, you should all read it. Other than that, But there was a point to it, which will come back to me occasionally. But it's a good area. It's a good source of revenue these days, and you just have to be careful with the contracts you sign and how you get. Oh, I know what the point was. It was about performing rights. The ASCAP, BMI, CSAC. There's a new entity called Global Music Rights, which has a small PRO, which is now competing also with ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC in the United States. And there's a lot of litigation these days, and the Justice Department is involved in the ASCAP BMI situation. I won't go into this, but it could have some significant effect on performing rights in the future. But at the end of the article, I went through all the changes that have happened in the world of performances for songwriters and composers, and for sound recording owners with Sound Exchange and other types of deals. And at the end, I said, word to the wise, in all your contracts and negotiations, be prepared for anything, because it will most likely happen. And that's the point of what I think I'm saying to you. Be prepared in looking at any of these deals as to any type of exploitation could make something could become very successful. Just understand what piece of it you do have if you're the person putting the crowdfunding out, as well as what the obligations are, your obligations, as well as what the obligations are and what the benefits are of the recipients. It's not as easy as it used to be. It's a little bit more sophisticated these days. Yeah.
You said something about interactive and non-interactive streaming. Can you kind of expand on that, and more specifically, what's the difference between non-interactive and interactive streaming in regards to making money?
Yeah, okay. Because that's an area that all of you really have to know. And I tell you, when it first came out, it's a complex area, but it's getting a little simpler because the rules are starting to form, at least in that area. And it's all new media stuff. And, the two main distinctions, interactive and non-interactive in the online world. Interactive is when the consumer, the listener, is actually choosing what they want to hear. Simple as that. Spotify is a good example. The non-interactive is when the listener, the consumer, is not choosing what they want to hear. Pandora is a good example. It's like a traditional radio station would be non-interactive. Now, you have different rules and laws applying to both as far as the song and as far as the record. I'll do the record first, and I'll add something which I mentioned before. On the record side, if it's non-interactive, then Sound Exchange is covering the artist and the record company. The non-interactive services are paying one entity who then distributes all that money out to artists and record companies. In the case of non-interactive, and we finished, and the song side for non-interactive, they have agreements with ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC, so all the songs are covered under these agreements. So the non-interactive world is very easy. There's really no negotiation involved whatsoever. There's statutory licenses with the sound recording, and there's negotiated or court-set licenses with ASCAP and BMI. When you go to the non-interactive area, let's go to the sound recording. Anybody like Amazon or Spotify, anywhere where the consumer is choosing, that service cannot play that sound recording, any sound recording, without having a deal with the record company who owns that recording. It's absolutely impossible. If you play one record, it's copyright infringement. So in that case, let's say Spotify is a good example. They have to go to every record company and every sound recording, independent or major and stuff, and make a deal with them for a royalty rate for them to play those records, not the songs, but the records on their service. And what's happened is that for all the major companies, these deals have been structured, they're negotiated deals. That's why the major record companies own pieces, they have equity shares in Spotify as part of their deal. They also have royalty rates, per streaming rates for their records, and they also have percentage of revenue rates in some of their deals. So it's a completely negotiated area in the non-interactive field for sound recordings. And remember what happens with the sound recording, it's not like the song area where the publisher's getting 50% of the money and the writer's getting 50% of the money always. In the sound recording area, it's based on whatever contract the artist signs with the record company. So if the artist has a 15% deal, they're not getting 50%. They're getting 15% of whatever the record company deal is under their structured deal and stuff like that. And if the advance is outstanding, which in most cases they do, that money will be applied toward the advance. Whereas in the songwriter-publisher field, those type of monies that are negotiated by ASCAP and BMI, they go directly to the writer and are never used to recoup publishing advances. So that's the good news. If you're a writer, you get your money directly from traditional media as well as from non-interactive and interactive media, because these services also have to have licenses with ASCAP, BMI, and CSAC. But those are negotiated licenses, and if they can't come to an agreement, it goes to court and a judge sets what the fee should be. So if you can't negotiate, it goes into court. That's why the rates are so low, by the way, in the online world for interactive and non-interactive for the songwriter and music publisher. It's different for the sound recording, where they are negotiated, at least in the non-interactive area. And it can be a lot of money, and it's made up a lot. 5 years ago, I would have told people used to, when I first started out, everybody wanted to be in the record companies. And then they switched off as the record companies they were hiring less, but they became much more top-heavy and weren't signing a lot of people. Everybody wanted to be in music publishing, which is a much more lucrative field and a lot more opportunities, because remember, with music publishing, that's why music publishing area you've got to know, because in the cases I just gave you, if all of a sudden you're doing a negotiation with somebody, let's say a film, and the Sid Vicious film was good. I can't remember, what was the name of that, about the Sex Pistols? Yes, Sid and Nancy is a great example. What they did, they went to the music publisher, who my brother represents that song, and during that time, and they wanted they wanted the song "My Way," and if you know the main version of "My Way" is by Paul Anka. He wrote it, but Paul Anka's the writer. But the main version by Frank Sinatra. That's the one that's been traditional one that's mostly played. But the music publisher has the song. So what they did, they went through all their compositions, and the version by the Sex Pistols of "My Way" is absolutely great. It's one of the killer tracks of all time. Paul Anka loves it, and and Paul Anka's the original writer, who wrote from the 50s and 60s, who's still around, he still performs. But he loved the version, but at least the publisher could go back to Sid and Nancy, producers, and say, okay, we can't get this version, but we've got the Sex Pistol version, which is an obvious one for this one, and we will negotiate a deal based on that. But again, the music publisher doesn't care which sound recording, this is my point, music publisher doesn't care which sound recording is being used because there are so many different sound recordings of that song or any other song that they say, okay, this one is, you don't want this one, or this one's too expensive. Let me go to a new version that's just come out by a new band of an old song, old rock and roll song or something like that, wholly different remix or cut, and they say, hey, that fits your thing. Because what's going on now, for any of you guys who do watch film, television particularly, and feature films or documentaries or independent films, you don't see a lot of the old versions are still being used, particularly in the major feature films. And most producers and music supervisors are looking for new versions. They're looking for new music in the main, or they're looking for new versions of traditionally well-known songs. And particularly when you go to feature films, I was in Vegas last week. I was talking to the Bar Association there on all the different type of licenses, the music licenses in Vegas, from concerts to music and slot machines to Cirque du Soleil to truncated Broadway shows to music in hotels. All these different licenses, if you're running a business in restaurants, that you've got to deal with when you're dealing with music. But the whole thing came up about, I'm losing my train of thought again. What was there was a license I wanted to get into. Oh, I think it was the Broadway one, where all of a sudden I gave them how the Broadway shows work, and it's a variation of how those licenses work when they truncate these musicals going into Vegas and stuff, and they get a percentage of the box office. So it's great. So if you're a writer in any of these shows, or the book writer, or this lyricist, or the composer, you're actually getting a percentage of the box office gross of Broadway shows, of the road companies, or of these shows that are in Vegas and stuff. So it's a whole different scenario, whole different license agreement, and it's based on these agreements that come out of New York, the Dramatists Guild, this old Broadway license, and all variations on that. So again, there's all these different licenses out there, but they do have a basic structure. There's a fee, there's a grant of rights always. The grant of rights is what you, the copyright owner, are giving to this user. And it could be very limited, like I mentioned The Voice. It's for the US and Canada only because most countries have their own voice. It's for a 2 or 3 year period because these episodes don't have a long shelf life. It's got some options in there. If they want to renew it for another 2 or 3 years, the additional monies are paid. Whereas in a dramatic series, take CSI or one of the big series, they're life of copyright licenses. It's a license that grant of rights. They can perform it anywhere except in theaters. Any type of new media, now or hereafter invented. That's what every major license says, because it takes into account all the new different types of media that may be invented and that may be using your music or transmitting your music in the future. So there are different licenses, but they have basic setup terms, duration of the use, always remember how they're going to use it is always very important, because you don't want to know, you don't want your song or sound recording used in a film or a documentary or a major film or a TV show if it's going to denigrate the copyright. So you always want to know how it's being used in that particular episode or feature film. Because in a lot of writers' agreements with publishers, some artists have this also, where their songs and sometimes the sound recordings they'll have a list of exclusions in their actual agreement with the music publisher and say, I don't want my songs used in NC-17 feature films, anything with nudity, anything with violence, anything with, they'll list various products for advertising commercials where they can't use it in there, except if they get permission from the writer, or whoever the writer is. So that's in almost every deal, and the old agreements didn't have much of that, but as writers became more sophisticated, and any renegotiation of a deal, that's a major deal point, is outside uses of a composition and a sound recording, when the writer or the artist, rarely the artist, but the writer particularly, has to have permission. I remember the Doors always, I knew all the guys except Jim Morrison, who had died before, I met those guys. And they had in their agreement all types of sync licenses, particularly for advertising commercials, had to be approved by all 4 members. So that would be in the case when I knew him, it'd be the estate of Jim Morrison, be Robbie Krieger, Ray Manzarek, both recently passed away in the last couple of years, and John Densmore, who was the drummer, who's the last one remaining. So now you've got an agreement that was signed many, many years ago where you still need 4 parties to sign off, and 3 of them are on estates. So these things can get complicated, but they are protections for the writers, sorry, for the creators of composition. So, which to me is always a good thing. If you're a good music publisher, you try to narrow those down to very select items like some of the things I mentioned, because you as a music publisher don't want to have a lot of restrictions as to how you're exploiting the music. Particularly with all this new media coming in and new types of uses, you don't want to have a lot of restrictions on where you've got to go to the writer and get his or her permission. So that's why you have time limits in these things. If the writer doesn't respond to you within, let's say, 7 days or 4 days, TV, you got to make a decision on the spot. You can't delay in television. Feature films you can, because TV shows are shooting weekly, so you can't really delay on that. You've got to know what your writer's restrictions are. Yeah, there's a question out there?
A lot of times there's multiple songwriters on one song. So how does that, like...
Can you speak a little louder?
Okay, if there's more than one songwriter on a song, how does that work, like, royalty-wise, especially if, like, say one person contributes more? Is that just, like, a deal that you have to cut out with whoever you're writing with?
Yeah, it's an important... Oh, okay, I'll finish off with that. It's an important question because it's collaborations, which happen a lot in songwriting and recording and stuff. It's always, always need to deal with everybody who's on a song as to what the split should be before the song is given to anybody. And in most cases, it's normally a 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 split or quarter split and stuff like that. But music is always treated separately from the lyrics. So music should always get 50%, lyrics should get 50% total. You split it up that way. But it can be different splits. In Nashville, whoever comes up with a good title gets half the song normally. That's how the Nashville did it, because titles are so important down in Nashville. In the sound recording area, if you're doing sound recordings, you had better get everybody in that studio, and I've been through this in litigation so many times, everybody in the studio sign off that they are not an artist or author. They're not a creator of that composition. They're not a copyright owner. They're work-for-hire employees, and you get them to sign off on it, whether you give them a fee or not, because the worst thing to do is come out of a studio with a recording and somebody is sitting there and say, oh, why don't you, yells in the background, or, say, oh, I'm gonna sing a note for a second. You're real nice, you let them on there. Because that can complicate the copyright ownership of that, and it's come up an awful lot. So the easiest thing is just, when you're doing a studio recording, have anybody in there sign off that they have no right to the recording, or they're employed for hires if you're paying them as musicians in it. And it's normally just the band, the main band in there, and a lot of times the songwriting, when band members see, most bands have 2 writers or 1 writer. A lot of times disputes will happen when the band finally starts seeing the artist royalties versus the songwriter royalties. And the songwriter royalties can be immense, and where a lot of the band members are not getting that, so that can create a problem within the band. So most times you'll see band members sharing in the publishing, even though you have 1 primary or 2 primary writers. That's one way to solve that problem. That's not the case with like Lennon and McCartney and the Rolling Stones and stuff. The 2 writers in both those bands own all the publishing and own all the writing credits. Those bands make a lot of money, so it's not an issue. But a lot of other bands, it is. So keep that in mind when you're negotiating agreements or dealing with bands who are songwriters as well as artists. And so I think that's it. I want to thank all you guys. I wish you the absolute best of luck. Yeah.